Well, hello and welcome. I could not be more excited about today's webinar. This is Terry Roberts. I am with DMAI, and we're the trade association for CVBs, also known as Destination Marketing Organizations. And I am so excited today about our topic, how planners can improve their RFP for more timely, complete, and without a doubt what we're all looking for, competitive responses. And before we get started, I would like to just take a moment to thank ePro Meeting Apps. ePro is our regular sponsor, and we'll hear from Sean at the end of the webinar a little bit more about how ePro can help you with some of your meeting solutions. But I'd like to get started by welcoming two great panelists. I think you're going to have a lot of fun today listening to them. They're both knowledgeable and pretty entertaining, so I'll put a little pressure on them. So I'd first like to introduce you to Jeanette Alvarez. Jeanette is Director of Account Operations with Experience. And without dating her too much, she's been in the hospitality industry for over 15 years, and she has experience in meeting planning, exhibit sales, registration, and housing, sourcing, and contracting negotiations. She is currently a Global Director of Account Operations for Experience, Inc., and she manages a Tier 1 citywide sourcing team, as well as a couple of other sourcing teams with experience. So, Jeanette, good morning and welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Terry, for having me. Welcome, everybody. We're going to have a great time here.
And our good friend and DMO CVB, Nathan Tollett. Nathan is Director of Sales with the Greater Houston Convention and Visitors Bureau. And Nathan also has been pretty active in our hospitality industry for more than a dozen years. I know he doesn't look it, but he launched his career in the convention center at George R. Brown, and he was there from 2002 to 5. Following that, he moved on over to the Greater Houston Convention and Visitors Bureau as a national account exec. And he works with several notable citywide conventions for Houston, does a lot of work with Microsoft and the International Dairy Deli Bakery Association. So, Nate, good morning and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Terry.
Right. All right, so let's get started. I always like to begin by kind of giving you a little glance at where we're going. And, you know, it seems to me like what all of you want is pretty simple, a timely, clear, complete response to your RFP, yet we continue to hear loud in our planner interactions and sessions your clear frustration with responses that you're getting to your RFPs. And we know we've got increases in lead volume that hotels are receiving, and so we're really aiming today to see how you can make your request, your RFP, get the attention and the response it deserves. And I think not only do you need to know what you should include, but also how to kind of tailor it for the destination, the facilities, and really also the hotels that you're considering. So in this webinar, we hope that you will learn from both Jeanette and Nate how to reconstruct and improve that webinar, and we're going to rely on a couple of things. An example that we have that's much like a RFP that's regularly received, and then also some advice from CIC, the Convention Industry Council, and their APEX RFP workbook. So that's where we're going. So very easily, how do I improve my RFP? So as I stated, it's really the same thing that we're all looking for. And I know that in many face-to-face education sessions, we always ask this question: are you experiencing this frustration? So I'd love to ask the attendees now to just maybe by a raise of hands go, is this a continued frustration, especially as we tweak and turn a little bit more to the seller's market? So I want to tee up a question both to Jeanette and Nathan. We'll start with you, Nate, first. But what's the problem? What do you see from the CVB and the hotel perspective as sort of the barriers to nirvana, if we could state it that way, of getting the kinds of responses that planners are looking for?
Well, I think first and foremost, before you start to analyze what the barriers and the frustrations are, you really need to make sure you have a good handle on what the overall landscape is. Terry, you brought up a really good point earlier about the overall increase in lead volume. I think DMAI has done some studies relative to this, but it's about a 300% increase. And I can rest assure everybody on the phone that there has not been a 300% increase in staffing at convention and visitors bureaus or hotels across the country. So not only are we seeing these increases in leads, but we've also in most cases seen staffing levels stay the same, if not diminished, depending on what's going on in those specific markets. So I think that's obviously a big component. And then just all the new channels that technology has afforded us in terms of overall lead distribution. There are a lot of different funnels that CVBs and hotels and venues have the ability to receive the information from planners. On top of that volume number, there are a lot of sometimes new internal processes that hotels and cities and venues are having to go through now as it relates to evaluating those specific opportunities. A few years ago, it was just one sales professional received one RFP, put together one proposal, and sent that back to the planner. Everyone is trying to be more strategic as it relates to the planner side, trying to find the best opportunity, the best concessions, and the best fit. But obviously, hotels are having to do the same thing, and so are destinations when you look at large citywide meetings that impact multiple properties. And so, whereas it used to be one person, now in some cases it could be 3 or 4. You have a sales professional, a director of sales, someone from the revenue team, and depending on the size of the venue, sometimes the general manager. And so getting all those folks in the same room evaluating your specific opportunity sometimes takes longer. The last point I'd like to make on that is that it's not just evaluating your opportunity. There in some cases could be 3 to 4 programs that are potentially viable over your set of dates, which in turn is a direct impact on the information provided to the supplier. If there's 2 opportunities or 3 opportunities and one doesn't have some of the necessary information that is required for that venue to make a reasonable, competitive, and comprehensive proposal back to the planner, then it's just human nature. You're going to take the path of least resistance, similar to what hotels do as they evaluate business, and the same can be said for suppliers. So understanding the landscape as it relates to technology, as it relates to the competitive nature of our industry as a whole, but then also the competitive nature of the specific opportunities that are being evaluated on the overall destination level as well as the individual property level. And I think it just goes back to just expect the type of proposal that you receive will be a reflection of the type of RFP that you distribute.
Wow, Nate. I guess now I want to ask Jeanette, well, if what doesn't kill us, does it make us stronger, Jeanette? And we did have a little ping in the comment box, which I think is really good, that we should, we're throwing around acronyms already, and that RFP stands for Request for Proposal. So, Jeanette, where do you weigh in here on the issues and the landscape from the planner perspective?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's important that when we look at this 300% increase, this is a positive thing, right? We're seeing the economy take off. People are still having meetings, which is great, if not more meetings. So all of that is good from a planner's perspective. I know, obviously, the challenge there is just getting people to answer us, in a timely manner, to be complete and to answer us at all. And so I think what's important, number one, is to know what's out there, know what resources you can use, build relationships with your CVBs, with your NSOs, know what it is that you have to offer. And I think this is important because, I work on a lot of citywide business, but I also do smaller meetings, and I do them outside of the country. And I think no matter what size your event is or how many times a year you source an event, you have something to offer. And being able to identify what that is that you have to offer is going to help you go out there and really, I know it sounds crazy, but sell your meeting to hotels or convention centers or wherever you may be going to make it look like the best piece of business that's out there. And it doesn't matter, again, if it's under 100 people or over 100,000 people. I also think it's very important, like I had mentioned before, to build relationships and doing that with your cities your CVBs and your NSOs. That's going to help you really push through all the other things that are blocking you from getting your RFP across.
And Jeanette, that's a nice lead-in actually to where we're moving to is, what are the things that you can do, and, who are the people that can help you. And Nate, tell us about, I guess, just a little overview, because we're going to get into more detail, but really, what is the CVB factor? When Jeanette says build these relationships with people that can help you, what kinds of things can you do for a planner at the beginning of the process?
Well, the first and foremost is that whether you're a large event or a smaller event, most convention and visitors bureaus around the country are structured in a similar fashion as this. They have sales professionals on their team that focus on events based on size or peak room requirements. And so just because you have a meeting that is 10,000 people, or in comparison, if you have a meeting for 50 or 100, you should receive the same levels of customer service regardless of the size of your meeting. And most DMOs are set up in a manner to respond to those planners based on those size, and they have specific staff members allocated accordingly based on those size of meetings. So I really want to make sure that regardless of the size of your meeting, they all generate economic impact. They all put heads in beds. They all provide a meal to serve. They all provide a bed to make or a taxi to be driven around. So just know that whenever you make that call. And then with respect to why to make that call, you know your meeting better than we ever will, and we like to think that we know our destination better than you ever will. So in order to maximize your time, I always talk about two things, and it's time and money. Everybody always wants both of those. Well, I think we can help you save money, but we can also help you save time. So going back to the comment earlier I made about lead volume, before you send a lead out that has 5 different cities and 10 different hotels and 30 different day patterns, and we're going to go into this, call your DMO first. You might be picking the worst week of the year because they have an annual event for 100,000 people. For example, if you come to Houston the first week of May, I would love to have you, but we have a great event that brings over 100,000 people. It's called the Offshore Technology Conference. We might be hard-pressed to help you find dates in our city over that particular week. That being said, the week before and week after, depending on the pattern, could be a fabulous fit for us. So not only citywide conventions, but also looking at what the general market mix is with that destination. You cannot assume that every destination internal demand generators are the same. There are certain cities across this country which Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, Wednesday are significant transient opportunities. The flip side could be said for some of our great destinations across the U.S., which are peak periods for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and then out on Sundays. The other thing are special events. This doesn't get a lot of traffic sometimes, and I use this not so much as a barrier, but as a positive. We are all trying to, not only from the supplier side, but from the planner side, trying to create experiences. There's a lot of wonderful destinations, a lot of great restaurants and hotels and venues, but it's all about that experience. So maybe look at your attendee profile, look at what makes them move, and then evaluate destinations that have cultural experiences that relate to your group. So for example, if you have, predominantly an international group from China, maybe a couple destinations have a museum that speaks to your attendee profile. That would be a great opportunity for an off-site venue that directly correlates to create that specific experience. So take advantage of the wonderful cities and destinations that we have across the country and build their attributes and their amenities into the overall experience for your program. And then, the last thing I would say is just seasonality. Every destination is different, similar to what their market mix is. Some are busy during the summer, some are weak during the summer, so you can never take any of those assumptions in, and quite honestly, depending on the new developments in the city, that continues to impact what the seasonality functions may be. So that's why I would always start with your DMO. Just like Jeanette mentioned, she always calls us first. We take an initial glance of the city, give her pros and cons, goods and bads, and then we specifically target those opportunities that make the most sense for us from a destination, and to be able to provide her the best value back to her client.
You know, Nate, I want to jump in here and ask Jeanette to, because I keep seeing questions pop up about, should I talk to my CVB, my Convention and Visitors Bureau, or my DMO, you know, Destination Marketing Organization? Those are interchangeable acronyms. Should I talk to them before I hit send in an RFP clearinghouse like Cvent or any other online search engine I use? So, Jeanette, tell me why you want to kind of have a conversation with someone like Nate before you hit send. So we're not trying to talk about how a meeting is sourced here. You know, you source however you want to source. You source sometimes by how you're required by your own company to source. But what's the advantage of getting some intelligence before you source?
Well, I love that question, and I have to say now I know why Nate and I are such good friends, because he pretty much nailed everything I was going to talk about, so I'm glad a question came up. But basically, I mean, yes, it's important. Before you hit send, definitely. It's not taking your power away. What it's actually doing is helping you, because, you know, I've got a process that I've literally built around this exact situation. And the first stop is the CVB. We do not hit send on that RFP. The reason being is the CVB is going to be able to tell me if I put a specific date range on my RFP, is that even going to work? Am I wasting my time getting my RFP when I already know that this date range is not going to work? And if not, what date ranges will work for me? Another important thing here, and I love to talk to these smaller meetings too, because I think they're important. You've got to change your perspective on how you look at your CVB. Like I said before, we don't have to worry about the CVB just for citywide. The CVB is going to be able to actually tell you which hotels are going to work for your event based on their size, you know, if it's a Four Seasons, if your event profile is going to fit within that, or are we looking more at a Hilton? Do they have in-house? They can even tell you. Do they have an in-house meeting going on at that time? So before you even send your RFP out, you're going to know, number one, if your dates are going to work, or if there's better dates, if there's a need time for the city or local properties, you're going to know that as well. What local events, I know Nate touched on this, but, you know, I'll use Cherry Blossom Festival along those lines. You know, could that be something super cool that's just kind of like a free idea for your program? So they'll be able to tell you all of that information. And then I do want to, just from a planner's perspective, because I know some of the questions that are going to come up after that is, well, we have NSOs and we have to work through our NSOs. We do too. We work through our hotel chain national sales contacts, and we do it, we're very close with them. But the important thing is that once we send our RFP, our NSOs know that that RFP is going out. So we are not cutting them out of the deal whatsoever. They're still very much in the loop as to what's going on. But your NSOs are not, you know, in the know as much as someone like Nate would be on a particular city, right? They know more about their chain and their property. So super important, I feel, and I hope I just drove it home, of why you should work with your CVB before you even send your RFP.
All right, so I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, because I think we've kind of had some conversation that sets us up nicely to say, I want you to really get into the meat here and look at this RFP. So there's areas that are standard for an RFP before it goes out, and that's obviously event profile, room block, space, history. And we will send to everyone on the call a link to CIC's Apex workbook and see all of the information that should go into an RFP. So Nate and Jeanette, what we'd like to do now is jump into applying this checklist that we're showing online and applying it to an actual RFP that, you know, obviously information has been taken out of, and ask you to sort of comment on each section. So let's look at this first section of event information. And could you both just kind of quickly comment on what's good here and what needs improvement, how you would reconstruct?
Okay. Ladies first, Jeanette.
I'll jump in, Nate, since I don't want you to steal my thunder this time, joking.
How do you rate?
I kind of know, I just know him so well. I know what he's going to pick out here. But just looking at this from a planner's perspective, I think, as far as the attendee profile, love to see the number of attendees, but what is the attendee profile? Who are you bringing to this event? Give the hotel or the CVB a little bit more knowledge on what your attendee base looks like. I think that's important. I'm a big advocate. If I'm going to do work, period, I'm going to do it right the first time, or why do it at all? And so when I see this additional information, please note that there are 6 sets of dates. Be a little bit more specific. We don't want to vomit information all over a piece of paper and expect someone to read it, but just be clear and concise about what it is exactly that you're looking for. And lastly, on my part, I think very important is to give a response due date, and obviously make that a nice length of time. Give yourself some shopping time as well. We don't want to send an RFP out at the last minute and expect the hotel to put down everything they're doing. And most important as well is a decision process and timeline. If a hotel can see that we're going to be signing this contract by the end of the year, making a decision at a certain need point for them, as far as revenue is concerned, it will get them excited about answering, what it is that you need from them.
Great.
Nate?
Nate, I know you have some thoughts about these dates and all these cities.
Yeah, certainly. And Jeanette actually got all of them except this one, so thanks for leaving me one, Jeanette. But the one comment that I would make would be respect to the dates and the cities considered. Just doing simple math. It looks like that we have 6 wonderful destinations here. We have 6 sets of dates, and I would guess that there's probably 5 to 6 hotels in each one of those destinations that could potentially accommodate this program. So just doing 6 destinations, 6 sets of dates, 6 viable opportunities, that's over 250 potentially viable patterns. And again, it goes back to the earlier comment. If you are one of 250 and you have another RFP sitting on your desk when you are one of 50, or in some cases one of 25 or 30, you probably are going to respond to the one where you have a better chance of winning first and then proceed from there. So to the extent that you as a planner can corner your boss or corner your board and really drill down onto the specific city or specific part of country or the specific date set, it will in turn allow the hotels to give you more of a timely response, because obviously it also takes time to check every set of dates. This pattern looks to be set, but I've seen some that give multiple patterns. So again, it just goes back to time is money. We can positively affect our ability to send you a timely response if the information, to the extent that you can, is more concise. So that would be my only other comment on this. Something else that is very important is where the signature is signed. Most DMOs, as well as convention bureaus and hotels, assign RFPs based on size, geography, and then where that document is physically signed. So thank you for whoever put this RFP together, because knowing that is in Denver and knowing the peak size would be an immediate answer to 2 of my key questions before I sent that off to our team.
Great. All right, Nate. So, and Jeanette. Now, Jeanette, this planner's provided some history, which we know is an important component, and done a little bit of breakdown in terms of sleeping room requirements. What are your quick assessments here?
I mean, right off the bat, again, I'm going to go back to my, if you're going to do something right, do it right the first time. I'm looking down at the additional information, and I'm looking at the room block. If you prefer 1/3 of your block to be double queens, then put it up in the room block. Spell it out for them. Make it easy for them to be able to look at something quickly. If you want your response quickly, give them the right information the first time so that they can do that for you. And be complete. So I think it's important that we not get lazy and again, just throw paragraphs in there of what you want and really spell it out for them. I also see a lot of missing history. I'm a huge advocate for history. History is only going to help you. So fill in that history. If you're missing a year, so what? But guess what? Put a note in there. Why are you missing a year? I'm looking here. Why did 2011 not happen? Just kind of explain what the gaps and the anomalies are in your history to help the hotel understand and help you better. Nate?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And then piggybacking on her comment about history, especially whenever you are looking for that unique experience and you are sourcing independent hotels. Obviously, you know, large brands have access to Delphi's and Daylights, and they can look at their sister properties. But if you're a boutique hotel, you don't have those resources. And a lot of times, whenever you call your DMO, we are trained to ask these type of questions to ensure that if the RFP does not have that, our members will pick up the phone and call us and say, hey, we'd love to bid on this program. Do you know where it's been? Because the information is not very concise. The other comment I would say is steer away from words like prefer and beneficial. I would love to say that I prefer to make every decision the right decision the first time, and that's always my preference, but that doesn't always happen. You know, 15 government rooms at per diem would be beneficial. Well, from the hotel's perspective, that might not be beneficial to give you all 15. They may benefit by only giving you 5. So if it's truly a requirement, something that is going to sway the decision one way or the other, please be specific with it. If there's flexibility, there's flexibility, but one is a preference and one is a flexibility. One can be negotiated and one cannot.
All right. What about the way this particular request for proposal has laid out meeting room requirements? Jeanette?
I don't think it's that bad. What I'm seeing that's missing here that I think is super important is square footage or the size of the room you need. Do not let the hotel decide what space they're going to give you, because they'll tell you it'll fit and it may not fit. You know if it's going to fit or not by looking at that square footage, by knowing your audio visual. So as specific as you can be, obviously, do it here so that they can answer you the first time. If you get this RFP back and they spelled out all the rooms for you, you're going to have to go back in and see if those rooms work, but you're going to have to go back to the hotel and say they don't work. I mean, it's definitely going to make a difference if the hotel can actually handle an event or not. So definitely be specific on your square footage. And Nate, I think you had a comment on here about reusable space.
Yeah, you know, because everybody's obviously trying to maximize rate, space, and space. And so if you have a general session room that breaks that can be used as a breakout, please tell them that in advance, because especially if there's other programs that are already on the books, rather than having to contact the other customer that has already been contracted to say, hey, can you give us some of that space back early, or we have a banquet, what are your room setups, can we flip the room the night before? Again, it just goes back to, you know, all the information. You know, and Terry, you don't have to go back in the slides, but something that I noticed was on this particular side, it says that the food and beverage budget is $90,000, but if you look at the previous one, it says that they've spent up to $35,000 higher. So if that's the range, put the range, but otherwise hotels are not necessarily going to go off maybe what your budget is, but they may go by off what your historical data is, and then you're going to say, well, I already sent a budget number, and you're going to say, yeah, but it's clear that you exceeded your budget, so let's have a conversation about that. So I think Jeanette made a really good point earlier about if 2011 isn't there, say why it's not. And then going on to this is probably one of my favorite slides, Terry, so I'll just kind of roll into it. Question number 2 is by far my favorite. I don't know of any group that has decided on a short list or a final destination based on who the accounting person is. And I will tell you a funny story. I got this when I was in the hotel about 10 days in a row on 10 RFPs, and I finally started including my own information because I was confident that planners were not reading it and it did not impact the decision one way or the other. My good friend Jeanette was one of the first people that actually commented on it, and she asked why I did it, and I said, well, for the reasons that I just explained. So going back to concise, comprehensive, if it's not an important piece to the puzzle for you to make a decision, and it's more of an internal data collection, if you will, save that for the last 2 or 3 hotels, or save that for the property that has been selected, because if you have a good sales professional, they are going to want to answer every question that you provide. And they may not know the answers to some of these questions, or if it's green initiatives, they're going to have to go to their ops person or their director of engineering, and that response back to you could be potentially delayed. So again, quick, concise, and we're going to try and do the same right back to you.
I agree, and actually I'm definitely will throw myself under the bus on this one. I mean, we used to ask so many questions, and the hotels and CVBs would have to answer them over and over and over again. And so we decided just to consolidate. Any question that you need to make a decision on where you're going to go goes into the RFP. Anything else, we ask the CVB and the hotel to complete after we have decided where we're going to go. And we're actually able to cut out a lot of time doing that.
Yeah, I think I'd like to kind of summarize, because I see so many questions, you know, going on the board, and I think I can kind of summarize and hit them all at the same time by saying, put on your RFP just what Jeanette said. Put on there what you need to make a decision. And then Nate, somebody said, well, what keywords do you like? And so maybe it's making something like, here's what we need to have, and here's what we'd like to have. And so then, you know, hotels that really are eager to get the business may be able to take a deeper dive. And to really kind of, you know, pare down the information that is needed to make the decision, and then wait to get into more specific information after your list has been narrowed. And Nate, I think you did a great job of covering this at the beginning of the webinar when we were looking kind of at a similar slide about who can help you and how. And I want to let everyone know that we're going to also be sending out a little infographic with our follow-up recording, and the infographic will guide them, Nate, through all those things, like, you know, what you need to ask your CVB or your DMO professional about seasonality, about a special event, about arrival departure patterns and transient demand and all those things in our follow-up. So we'll get that out to them as well. But I thought you did such a good job of covering that, Nate.
Sure.
Go, Nate.
Go, Nate. All right, we have a ton of questions on the question board, and I love that because I know that means that you've really engaged them. So what I'd like to do is just kind of finish by telling those of you who are on with us who may not have visited empowerMINT.com, it is DMAI, the Trade Association for Convention and Visitors Bureaus. It is our portal that connects you to DMOs to get advice and allows you, if you would like, to send your RFP from our channel or take it anywhere you would like. We just want to make sure that you are able to get some intelligence before you hit send from some people that we think can really help you hone in your RFP. So I know we already have had some questions about CMP credit, and you will receive a half an hour of clock time for Domain H, which is site management. And your CMP certificate and your webinar recording will be sent to you middle of next week. So be looking for that. You can also check your spam, because a lot of times our follow-up recording will end up in your spam along with your CMP certificate, so we don't want you to be frustrated there as well. So we're going to take those questions, but as really quick before we do, I want to just unmute Sean and say, Sean, what would you like to tell planners who are still with us about ePro and how you can help them, and then we'll get to the questions on the board for Jeanette and Nate, which there are many. Hey, Sean.
Hi, sure. Thanks, Terry. Thank you very much for presenting this webinar today. And Jeanette and Nathan, I want to extend a thank you to you as well for the valuable information that you have shared. Yeah, I just wanted to talk real quick about my company, ePro Direct. Basically, we offer native mobile application solutions for events and organizations, and they work on multiple platforms in order to generate the highest download and usage rates. I know that many of you that are currently utilizing mobile apps for your events, but those who are not, I really suggest that you get in touch with me so that I can really show you how to enhance your overall attendee experience while moving toward a green solution. Because incorporating more mobile apps into events is really a hot trend nowadays, and it really does enhance your attendee experience and puts the event information right at their fingertips. For those that are using the apps currently, also I suggest that you get in touch with me as well. I will be providing all the information to everyone on the phone call today via email, because not only are our prices straightforward and very competitive, but also our customer service is above expectations. We provide a program manager that works with you throughout the process and have assistance available nearly 24 hours a day. And
Great.
I'd just like to just mention, just real quick, we have not only single applications for single events, and those we have the categories to start at $1,000. We have apps for organizations holding multiple events, and we also have apps for national organizations that have local or state chapters. Apps for the national are free, and then that's for 7, as long as 7 of the local chapters purchase the apps for themselves. And I can get into the details in the email.
Okay, Sean, thank you very much, and we really appreciate your sponsorship. All right, Nate and Jeanette, I'm going to kind of, so many questions are kind of similar that I'm going to see if I can do a good job here on this question board of kind of putting some of them together. So there's a lot of questions about how CVBs handle independent or third-party planners differently than they handle other planners. And I'm really interested in the thoughts there.
Sure. To me, there's no difference. Whether they are an end user, for example, with a corporation or association, or a third party, there's still potential opportunities, in my case, for Houston. And so we want to help facilitate the information and the resources about our destination to the extent we can in the most efficient manner. So, you know, one of the most important things, especially if you're an independent third party and you utilize platforms like Steven or Starsight, from what I understand, there's an option in there for you to include your Convention and Visitors Bureau in that respective city. So if you don't have the ability to call on us prior to sending that request for proposal out, simply include us on that. You will hear from us, and what oftentimes happens is we'll say, hey, we have a couple other options that we think would be a great fit for reasons 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we treat everyone the same. We treat everyone as a potential customer to Houston in my case, and we will provide the same level of customer service. You don't need to be concerned that if you include the Convention and Visitors Bureau that we are going to go direct to your client. Does it happen every once in a while? Absolutely. But as a whole and as an industry practice, we understand and respect those relationships. And Jeanette could even speak to this as well, but her and I have a very professional relationship, but we're also friends. And so there is the line that always has to be drawn as far as her relationship with her end user. And so if I am going to communicate directly with them, I either call her in advance, I copy her on the email, or all three of us collectively have a conference call. So to me, again, everyone's the same. DMOs understand the process. We understand the variety of channels. And if you can't or don't have the time to include us prior to, certainly include us on that initial distribution.
Jeanette, you want to weigh in there at all?
I was going to add in, and I concur. Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, I've got a very high-profile, very confidential client who doesn't like, that is private about some of the information they share. As a professional, I know what I can and cannot share with the CVBs or with anyone else for that matter. And so Nate and I, and he knows as well, we're able to kind of draw the line where we have to. I mean, there's times where I know of decisions that he doesn't know about yet, and I don't share that because that's part of my job. So I definitely think that there is a way to do that. And what I love, too, is, you can't cut your client off if people, or if they want to be part of the communication with cities or hotels. I mean, pardon me. You should give your client the option, at least, to build a relationship. We've got, like Nate said, a big, happy family. I feel like we all have a great relationship, my client, the city of Houston, and myself. So it really is a win-win for everybody.
All right, here's a couple more questions, one for Jeanette, one for Nate. Jeanette, you mentioned about giving deadlines for RFP responses. Someone wants to know what you think a standard deadline would be.
I don't think there's a standard deadline. I think there's probably a range of deadlines depending on the size of your meeting and the scope of your meeting and what it is you're trying to accomplish. I think most importantly, I can say, please don't send your RFP out and ask for 48 hours if you're doing a large size meeting. I think it's important for people to think as far out as they possibly can. It's kind of like when you're having to go somewhere at the last minute and trying to find that pair of shoes you've had in your head forever. You're not going to find it, right? You've got to kind of give yourself time to shop around, give other people time to be able to get you the information you need, get you the right information. You know, for my citywide business, we go from 5 to 7 days for an overall RFI, or request for information. That would be me reaching out to Nate for some information. And for hotels, we'll give them 3 to 5 business days to answer. But just know, and I'm sure you guys all have the experience, there's times where the hotels or the CVBs, somebody's out on vacation. It depends on the time of the year. Do they have a huge citywide in? So it's just important to give people as much time as you can.
Good. Really good answer. All right, Nate, here's one for you. I think you confused a few listeners about multiple dates. A comment that they thought offering multiple dates would make everyone happy. It would allow them to work with alternate dates. And I don't think that's really what you meant to say, don't have alternate dates, but maybe 6 alternate dates and, you know, 6 cities under consideration becomes overwhelming, and a hotel may think, you know, my chances of getting this are way too slim, I'll move on.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, and certainly apologize for any confusion that might have caused. But yes, knowing what your flexibility is up front certainly allows the supplier to evaluate all options to get back to you. My only comment was with respect to the amount of time that it takes to do that whenever there's 4 or 5 different opportunities sitting on that person's desk. So Terry, you're absolutely right. Certainly encouraged to know all of the key information ahead of time. It essentially was a comment relative to that it is a numbers game, and if you can dwindle down the list rather than 10 destinations down to 4, and if you can solidify that process to the extent that you can, it just makes the ability for the venue or for your partner to respond quicker.
Good answer there, Nate. All right, there's a bazillion questions that kind of all wrap around this, and it is all these electronic RFP channels, how's everyone adapting? And, you know, is it, how do we use the technology? I guess the question is, how do we use the technology so that it serves us versus hurting us?
So can I take this one? I'd love to take this one.
Please do.
I think we've got to look at technology as a tool, kind of like email is a tool of communicating, but we can't let it take away our relationships that we have. I know my team uses one of the online RFP systems as a tool, but as soon as we send out an RFP, we're on the phone. We're talking to NSOs. We're talking to hotels. We're doing follow-up. So I don't want people to think this is just like an electronic, that was really hard for me to say that word, I'm not going to say it again, electronic exchange across your computer, and that's all that's going to happen, because that is not going to make you happy. And it's probably not going to make the others happy either. What you've got to do is get your information out. It helps you to be clear and precise, right? The tool really organizes you to put your stuff in and make things that required that you can't do when you just send an email. But ultimately, you need to pick up the phone. Don't be afraid of the telephone, and still have your conversations that you need to have.
I would agree with Jeanette, and I always go back to, yes, everything is electronic, but we're still placing face-to-face meetings. And so take what you're placing and put it into practice as it relates to finding the best venue for that. So face-to-face meetings will never go away. There's obviously a tremendous amount of value in that. The technology is just a mode that hopefully facilitates that process and makes it more efficient.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so my key takeaways from listening to you are what you put out really affects what you get back. That's one thing I really took away from you. The second thing I take away is electronic tools are helpful, but people are vital, right? Yeah. And then I think the other thing I really took away is reduce some of your frustration frustration by getting, turn downs or not getting replies, by doing your homework before you send out your RFP to understand the climate of the destination, the availability over certain sets of dates, that can go a long way in reducing frustration. So people are important, and it's still at its very core a people business. Any closing thoughts, either Nate or Jeanette? We've had so many people stay on. I mean, we're really have the majority of our audience still hanging on here for our 15, almost now 20 minutes of questions. So any thoughts?
Thank you for joining us. I mean, Terry, I think you nailed it when you were, naming your takeaways. I think, relationships overall are super important. And again, I just want to drive home the fact that it does not matter what size your event is, and kind of clear that out of your head. Everyone is important. You just have to figure out what makes you important.
And then, the other thing I'd say is just know that the Convention and Visitors Bureau is an extension of both teams. So we are essentially Switzerland, and we are essentially a middle person to facilitate the needs of our destination and the amenities of our destination and the requirements of your RFP. And so simply allowing those two to be put together at the beginning of the process to make sure that the resources and the amenities that we have are matching the goals and objectives that you have, I think it can be a much more seamless process. So, the other comment I would make that is a myth about Convention and Visitors Bureaus is that there's a charge. You will not receive an invoice. You will not receive a fee from using your DMO professional. We are funded in most cases through hotel occupancy tax. So we are a complimentary resource to you. We are here to serve not only you as the planner, but our members in our respective destinations. So please do not hesitate to call. I can't stress enough about the way that everybody is set up with respect to large meetings, medium, and smaller meetings. So you should receive, and especially if you call Houston, you will receive the same level of customer service regardless of the size. So again, thanks for everybody's time. If anybody has any further questions, I know Jeanette and I are happy to help.
Yeah, we'll be sending out a recording to our webinar, the PowerPoint deck. We'll send out the CIC Apex workbook link. We'll send out our little infographic on demand. So we're going to put a lot of tools in your hands. But, Nate, you're right. This isn't a commercial to use CVBs because we're not selling you anything. It's an educational forum to just help planners understand resources that are available to them for education. And it's an a la carte menu. You can use a CVB for as many or as few things as you need help with. And Jeanette, we thank you for being a planner advocate for our industry. We are indebted to you, and thank you very much. Nate, we thank you for being a great representative, a professional representative of CVBs across the United States and those internationally as well. So thank you very much for joining us today. We hope that you will check in with us next month. Our May webinar is going to be what you should divulge before you talk room rates. So we hope to have an exciting conversation next month as well. And we got a really nice comment from Andrea Kenny saying that this was one of the better webinars that she has viewed in a very long time. So Andrea, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Everyone have a great day.